Hello, my name is Reginald Glenn, and I am the point in time count coordinator for the 2015 Mississippi Balance of State point in time count, which will be held on January 26th through 30th. This video is designed to be an informal walkthrough of our point in time count surveys. If you volunteer with the Mississippi Balance of State before, you'll note that to complete the point in time count, we have to complete surveys that give information on particular clients, especially pertaining to a person's homeless status. That is the crux of why we count. Specifically, wondering if someone is sheltered, meaning in a place that is like an emergency shelter or transitional housing, or someone who is unsheltered in a place not meant for human habitation. This video is going to be designed to help us to understand the how to walk through the survey during a client interview, and I wanted to be sure to make any points about what's required and what's not, or to understand what the questions are asking, and how we should be able to thoroughly go through these questions and answer them with appropriate response or to the satisfaction of the survey. With all that being said, I want to begin by first explaining what last year's survey looked like. If you can see here on our screen, there is and you see the 2014 point in time count survey, and specifically this is the non-domestic violence survey. As you can see, it has the appropriate spots for sheltered, unsheltered, and all the different demographics that HUD would require for us to record, so that we could have an accurate count of who is homeless and who is sheltered in the balance of state. As you can see, this particular one has all those demographics, and plus, one of the things we've done in recent years, we've had, if you see here at the very bottom, we have a needs assessment. Section where we were tasked with asking the questions about what type of services are people who are homeless receiving. And so in this particular service assessment, the three main questions we asked with all these different categories, as you can see scrolled across here, are: did someone receive this service, need a service, or was denied this service in the past 3 years? And so with that, we've had much success in using this assessment to count and assess and be able to serve multiple homeless persons throughout the balance of state. However, this year we're taking a very different turn in the development of our survey. Roughly around November, we encountered what's called the VI-SPDAT. The VI-SPDAT stands for Vulnerability Index Service Prioritization Decision Assistance Tool. And what this is charged to do is to give us as a continuum, as well as local agencies, a better way of figuring out who needs services and who needs to be prioritized above who. In a recent meeting, we discussed about the need for this survey and how it would impact our count, and so we decided that it was a very beneficial move for us to not only use our survey, but try to find a way to incorporate the VI-SPDAT. And the point in time count committee at some point actually had to discuss this role, and so we came up with this idea that we should merge the best of both worlds to really capture homelessness, because we want to be able to put our information into the HMIS, or what's called the Homeless Management Information System. But then we also want to be able to capture information so we can be able to prioritize people and be able to serve them should the need arise. And so as you kind of see our 2014 PIT survey, you see that it's fairly simple, one page, maybe a lot of information, but yet it's very compact. And now with that being said, now I want to show you what this year's survey looks like, the 2015 point in time count survey, and what it looks like. as you can see here on our right side of our page, you see that for the most part right now, when you look at the comparison between the 2014 and 2015, you don't really see any difference hardly just yet. You see basically all the fields that you see on this form, but here's where it gets it gets a little bit more complex. As you see, the point in time count survey for this year has been essentially melded with the VI-SPDAT. And so as you can see, this year's survey is essentially longer. In fact, it has increased from 1 page to 4 pages. What we decided, what the point in time count committee decided to do was to the original VI-SPDAT developed by 100,000 homes campaign was essentially about 8 pages. And so what we decided to do is we wanted to be able to incorporate the VI-SPDAT, but then we also wanted to find a way, if we could, to compress it into less pages. And so essentially this is 2 pages front and back. So it is an improvement from the previous version in a sense, especially with the idea we want to be able to print more survey on less paper, having one person have recording things on about 7 to 8 pages is a bit of a paper killer. So we decided we would make sure to compress this into 3 to 4 pages. I think it came out pretty well, but we want to be able to capture lots of information according to the VI-SPDAT and be able to prioritize services and figure out who's the most vulnerable out there and how can we help them. And the best way to do that is to ask these questions. Now that we've explained the difference between the 2014 and 2015 point in time count surveys, now we're going to look a little bit at a lot of the changes that have went into the 2015 survey. As we stated before, this has been melded with the VI-SPDAT, so this is essentially very much longer than last year. And so what we want to do is take time to go through all the elements, hopefully pretty briefly, and make sure that everyone is clear on what the PIT survey is asking, and maybe some of the questions people may have about certain items within the VI-SPDAT. First thing I want to make sure everyone notices is that as opposed to years past, we have a date field in which people can just simply circle a date. In past times, we had people to write that in, and so we decided to just make it easy for everyone to be able to put the date on. And so all you have to do essentially at the very top is circle a date. It's very important to record the time, because you never know when someone's memory may not be quite as healthy, and so you may forget when you give a particular survey or who you were surveying at a specific time. And so this just helps you to record when you took the survey from someone, so you can essentially write the time in here, and then you can also circle AM or PM, and here's a small space to make notes just in case you need to make notes about a person's appearance, where they were surveyed, or some special note about that person's survey. Next, we see here that we have essentially this part is divided into 2 sections. If you are in an emergency shelter facility or transitional housing facility, this is considered sheltered, which means that you can check this box, and then you can write the facility name right here, as well as the program that facility of that facility that you are particularly counting. Also, once again on the other side, if this person is in a place not meant for human habitation, meaning if this person is maybe staying on the street, if someone is living in their car, or if they're on a park bench or something of that nature, then you can check the unsheltered person, because this is what the definition by HUD considers to be an unsheltered person. One of the first things you want to ask, because more than likely there'll be more than you out on the street surveying people at one time. One of the first things you really want to ask is, number one, have you been asked these questions today? We don't want to repeat surveys unless there is some reason that we would have to. And so it's essentially if this person has been asked these questions today, just check yes, stop right there and thank them for their time, and apologize for maybe trying to survey them again, or if not, you simply go no. And then you write down the survey location. The survey location can essentially be, if you have an address, that'd be great, or a particular building in a particular city. So let's say you may have surveyed this person at Walmart on Highway 49 in Hattiesburg, Mississippi. Well, then you can simply write that in this blank, and then also write the county, because one of the major ways that we identify our homeless populations in Mississippi is by how many are counted in each county. General information, pretty much to most degrees will go without saying. There is a slight difference between people who are in a sheltered situation, meaning emergency sheltered or transitional housing, versus someone who is in a domestic violence situation. But we'll touch on the domestic violence issue later on in this video. But essentially, you have spots for your first name, your last name, birth date, age, social security number. Now, with the social security number, what we desire is that someone would be trusting enough and helping enough to basically give us their full social security number. However, because the point in time count is a voluntary count, what we would like to say to people is if they're not able or not trusting enough to give their full social security number, we would at least desire the last 4 digits. We would like, as we put these in HMIS, want to be able to have a way to identify these people from, one person from another, because 2 people could potentially have the same name, but yet have different social security numbers. And so we will desire the full, but the last 4 digits would be a great identifier. And of course, gender being male or female. You may notice if you're a veteran of our point in time, you may notice that there is something new added under here where you'll see throughout the survey that there are various little screen tips tips that tell you if this person meets a certain criteria at 1 point. And that's because the VI-SPDAT essentially uses a scoring system to figure out how vulnerable and what type of housing or what type of situation someone is in and what type of housing someone needs. At the very end of this particular survey, we'll go over and talk about how to score that and what's the significance of the score. Initially, though, what we're concerned with is trying to record as much information in as much of a timely fashion. One of the things most people realize if you're a veteran of the count is that whereas in the last survey in 2014 may have taken a person about maybe one to maybe 3 minutes to fill out on site right in front of a person, this one may be a significant, you may be investing a significant amount of time more than in previous times. So one thing I would encourage people to do is to make sure that they have plenty of volunteers to be able to fill out these surveys on any site. Moving on, we see that as part of the general information, we see ethnicity. Ethnicity is essentially broken down into 2 parts. That's Hispanic Latino or non-Hispanic non-Latino. And so that people can be able to simply tell you, are they Hispanic or not? And that will probably answer that question fairly fast. Then next we have race. Make note that you can check more than one race. So if someone is if someone is basically mixed with different ethnicities, this survey makes convention for that. Moving on into the middle section, and this is one of the most important parts of this survey, because this is the bread and butter of how we figure out how should we continue to survey this person or not. Hopefully, if it's not captured by the above question about have you been asked this question, we want to know specifically if this person is sheltered homeless or unsheltered homeless. So essentially you have 2 columns of choices here. Essentially you need this person, if this person is being asked these questions, essentially the very first 3 are probably the most important ones, because we know that this person is sheltered or unsheltered. After that, maybe probably on roughly about here, we start walking into territory where people are actually stably housed. Now, when you hear that, you may say to yourself, wait a minute, but this person is on the street all the time. But if they're in a place where they're, like for instance, let's just say, for instance, one of the mistakes that's made all the time when people are counting is that um, they declare someone homeless although they're sleeping on a family member's couch or an apartment or a house. Well, according to the HUD definition, if this person is not in a place not meant for human habitation, or an emergency shelter, or in transitional housing, this person is not literally homeless. And so we want to be careful to not choose people who are not literally homeless, because we want to make sure that we meet the criteria at the point in time count to accurately count those who are literally homeless. So the next section of this survey is the history of housing. Essentially, the question asks, how long have you been homeless? Trying to calculate if a person is possibly chronically homeless. So the first thing it asks you is, how long have you been homeless? And in this particular stat, it's asking the question of currently, throughout this particular stat, how long have you been homeless? Has it been a month? Has it been 6 to 12 months, 2 months, 3 months, half a year, whatever the case may be? And so you can just select one of those and make sure that that it accurately depicts how long that person's been homeless. The next question also tackles the chronically homeless portion of this survey. In the past 3 years, how many times have you been housed and then homeless again? It's leading to this idea of, are you chronically homeless? Are you constantly going back into homelessness? Be sure to answer that question, because we want to know if people are constantly experiencing homelessness, or is this one of those times where they've simply fallen their luck and they're trying to get themselves back on their feet. The next part of the survey involves family composition. Now, in family composition, what we want to accomplish is we want to figure out if this person is in homelessness on their own, or are they experiencing homeless with a family or with a spouse, or whatever situation may arise. And so, as you can see here, you have if a person is individual, you can simply check individual, male or female. Or if that person is a youth, which is defined by a person being under the age of 18, then you can choose individual youth, under 18, male or female. So you can simply just check that box. If someone is a single parent, you can check this box, because it covers the idea of whether it's a male head or a female head. You also can possibly have a single parent family who is led by a youth in the household. So that's also another idea of someone option you could choose. And also you can choose, let's say maybe there's a homeless couple and they have no children. Maybe it's a two-parent family. Maybe it's a man and a woman who have children, but then it's a two-parent family. That's a possibility. And also you have an option for those who are an adult couple with no children. One of the things we want to make sure that we capture in our family composition is how many children that a family has, if there is a family who is experiencing homelessness. And so note that the number of children only includes children who are staying with you. So if you meet someone on the street and they say they have 4 children, but only 3 are with them, we would only desire that you count 3 of the children, because those are the children who are homeless. If there's another child who may be staying with a relative or with a spouse or with a significant other, then we can't count them in homelessness. But the people who are immediately experiencing homelessness, whether it's in the shelter or on the street, are the ones we were looking to count. And let's say if you have someone who is an adult and is on the street with you, you need to, the number of adults in the family would include yourself plus any other adult family member. So there may be a person or a family experiencing homelessness who let's say there's maybe a nuclear family, but it may also have a grandmother who they're taking care of and they're in homelessness. Well, and when you would speak of the adults, you would simply count yourself plus, let's say if you have a spouse, that would be another person, and the grandmother. So that would be 3 adults who are experiencing homelessness during that particular time period. And so then the survey goes more in depth about that, about the adults and their those other adults in their current situation. See that this particular family composition form actually makes room for a spouse, See, as you see, there's a space for date of birth, gender. You can write their first name or last name, social security number, ethnicity, and race. And also it makes room for another adult. So there's someone over the age of 18 who's living in the house who may not necessarily be a child, then who may not necessarily be a child part of your family. You can also have room on the survey for that as well. Now, the survey, I know that there are times when families can get maybe normally, it can be a little large, but we have provided spaces for 4 children, and essentially it asks three essential things. Number one, the child's name. Number two, the child's gender. And number three, the age, meaning we can write the age out right within this space. And as you just, once again, as you can see, this can be done for up to 4 children. If there are more than 4 children who are part of the family, please feel free to write in those children somewhere along that sheet so you won't lose that information. Don't feel like you're held to only recording a certain amount. Try to find some space on that paper, whether it's here in the bottom of the white space or maybe in the in this blank over here, and scratch out other adult. But want to make sure that we want to capture all information that is, indicative of describing that family's picture of homelessness. One of the last questions on page 1 is the cause of homelessness. And so there's a bevy of choices here, from employment to housing issues to medical disability issues, family problems, natural disaster, meaning that could be that someone lost their home in a fire, or someone was put out because of a hurricane or tornado, something of that nature. And then there's recent immigration. There's also a spot where you can explain if there is a circumstance out of something that we did not include in this form. You can have space to write that, or if someone refuses to give you any of that information, you can also check that also as well. As we move into page 2, we see that one of the first things we're asked is, have you ever served in the military? If someone has served in the military, then the next 2 questions are required. So as you can see, if someone is serving in the military, then the next question asked is, what war era did you serve in? And then you can see the bevy of choices all the way up to Afghanistan and Iraq, which are our 2 current wars, as well as the Persian Gulf. You also see what is the discharge type. Now, for those people who are in the military, you know that once they're discharged with a certain status. Usually, assuming a veteran or a military personnel has had a specifically clean record and has done no wrong, it's usually honorable discharge. So if you answer the military question, be sure to answer that which war era and which discharge type, and you can see the various discharge types throughout that. The next question we have here is, what kind of health insurance do you have, if any? This is something that is recently made into the data elements across the nation's HMIS systems, because due to the Affordable Care Act and some of its implications on the status of Americans and their health benefits. As you can see, there are multiple choices here, from Medicaid to Medicare, whether it's employer provided, VA medical service provided, or whether it's even if you have a child who has children's state health insurance, we also have a choice for that. And if they have none, of course, here's a blank for that. The next question, have you been diagnosed or told that you have any of the following disabilities? Remember that this information is strictly based on what a survey participant tells us. Although even if there may be some obvious answers, whether you're sitting in front of someone and you can clearly see that there's a disability, this form is actually is based on what the client says they are experiencing. So we're not charged to necessarily even if it's obvious to make assumptions about what this person is experiencing, but we simply take down the answers of what they give us. So just to kind of be aware of that, that could be an issue that someone, although I have never quite seen it be an issue in the past, it's a possibility that could be an issue. The next section of the point in time count survey talks about risk, and as you can see, because this survey is a little bit more complex, we've added some of the script wording from the VI-SPDAT to help you work your way through the survey as you're talking to the survey participant. So in this particular case, when it comes to the risk section, you see the script says this. It says, I'm going to ask you questions about your interactions with health and emergency services. If you need any help figuring out when 6 months ago was, just let me know. And so then it comes to the question of in the past 6 months. And so every question under here has to do with the past, in the past 6 months. And I don't have to go down all the questions, but as you can see, it refers to how many times you've been to the emergency rooms, had interaction with the police, had been taken to the hospital in an ambulance, how many times have you used a crisis service or suicide prevention hotlines, as well as hospitalizations in a mental health facility. And then and once again, we see the scoring, we see all the scoring directions, but once again, we'll get back to what those all mean and how they culminate at the very bottom of the survey. In question 6 here, we see that have you ever been attacked or beaten up since becoming homeless? You will notice that compared to years past, that a lot of these questions are a lot more detailed and very personal. And so what we want to do is be sensitive to the fact that someone is allowing us to take their information. We want to be very trusting. We want to be able to allow them to answer the questions or not. If they feel like it's too personal, they have the right not to answer the question. But if they are allowing us to, take the answers to those questions, we want to be very careful to honor the trust they have in us. So if someone denies to actually take the survey or skip over or wants to skip over a question in the survey, honor those requests, because this is a very personal survey. It's very detailed, and we want to be able to this person to give us as much information as possible without making them feel unsafe or uncomfortable. Question number 7: have you been threatened or tried to harm yourself or anyone else in the last year? And we'll just kind of scroll down, but as you read and see through this survey, you'll see that there are some very, very detailed and personal questions. Let's see. As you go into the next part of the survey, which is socialization and daily functions, you'll see that these questions get into the idea of are they able to function on their own? Are they connecting with other people? What type of interactions are they having socially in public? So just kind of as a sample of some of these questions, you see, is there anyone that thinks you owe them money? Do you have enough money to meet all your expenses on a monthly basis? In question 17, do any friends, family, or other people in your life ever take your money or borrow cigarettes or use drugs or drink alcohol, or get you to do things you really don't want to? The survey is lengthy and detailed. Once again, although I keep repeating it, be sure to honor any requests. We want them to answer the questions if they are open to answering these questions, but if they are not, we don't want to push the issue. We want to be as sensitive to these issues as possible. Now, one of the main things I want to mention in this particular section is the introduction of what's called the observe only question. Now, in the observe only, we want to make sure that we do not physically or verbally ask this question to the participant. This is where we actually get to make a judgment call. Like even if they were reluctant to give us answers of certain parts as that we've already passed in the survey, this time is a time when we can actually make a judgment call and look and see if there are other signs of poor hygiene. There are other observation-only questions, but this is kind of the introduction. So just remember that as you're going through the survey, when you see the words observe only, do not ask, make sure that you don't ask that question. You just simply make the observation, and then you check and you move on and ask them the next question. The next section pertains to wellness, and so this pertains on like what type of like if they have any medical conditions or disabilities. This kind of goes in depth and asks questions about their health care and what type of ailments they may have. And so it goes down a long list of potential ailments that a person could be experiencing in homelessness. Once again, try to be as sensitive as possible, but try to get as much information as possible. As I scroll through this survey, notice that even in this wellness section, you see another observation-only question. Do you see any signs of a serious health condition? Once again, make the judgment. You take a look, and based on your observation and based on the knowledge that you have, make that judgment call and click and check yes or no. This particular part of the survey, as it refers to wellness, talks about a person's like chronic health conditions and other health conditions, substance use, mental health. As you can see, as it starts at question 40, we see mental health. And then lastly, it ends with this idea of trimorbidity, meaning if a person is experiencing substance use, a mental health condition, and a medical condition, this is a chance to basically make record of that and be able to give them a partial score to basically I guess understand their vulnerability in homelessness. As you can see, once again, there are more questions concerning other conditions and wellness, as well as types of abuse, to round out that part of the wellness screening. And then lastly, once again, we made mention earlier that one of the new things that we've added is that as you see littered throughout the survey, you probably made notice of there was bold writing with directions about if this person experiences this, +1. Now, what that means is that during the VI-SPDAT, and you don't necessarily have to do this in the middle of the VI-SPDAT, you can actually do this maybe afterwards when you get a moment to yourself after you look over what you recorded. You can go back to the survey and you'll see certain spaces. Like, for example, you'll see spaces like this, where it says right here, it says yes. If someone answers yes to questions 9 or 10, or if the respondent provides any other than shelter, answers other than shelter, in questions 11, then score +1. And so what you would do if that was, so for instance, in question number 9, does someone force or trick you to do things that you do not want to do? If the answer to that is yes, well then you would check yes, and then you would also in this pre-screen score box write a +1. And so all throughout the survey you'll see shaded areas where it tells you if this person experiences this, or if the answer to this question is yes or no, then add a +1, which you see the pre-screen scoring sections right to the right of the questions that you see on the survey. And so essentially, once you get finished screening this person, what you would do is you would add up all the ones, and you would add them all up in this scoring summary section. And so as you can see that there's a subtotal score for each section. So as the survey is divided, you can basically go through the general information part, add the score, what the total score is, adding 1 plus whatever the case may be, history and housing of housing and homelessness, risk, socialization, and wellness. And then when you get finished, you should have an overall score in the pre-screen total box. Now, what that would lead to is this. This score can help you understand how much of a service a person needs. For instance, we see that at the lower end of the scoring column, we see that if someone scores between 0 and 4, maybe this person is not recommended for housing, or and support assessment at this time. But if a person scores between 5 and 9, maybe that this person is maybe recommended for rapid rehousing assessment, meaning that from someone who may be literally homeless, this person is basically we try services throughout the state and other other agencies will make the assessment of rapid rehousing, meaning that this person may be homeless and is trying to be rapidly rehoused so that they won't experience homelessness for a very long time. And then also you see the highest scores you can have are 10 or above. And if this person is in the 10 or above category, it may be that a recommendation for permanent supportive housing or housing first assessment is made. Once again, this is not a guarantee that a person will be housed because of this score. However, it is an indication that further assessment needs to be done and that this person could potentially qualify for a specific housing service. Now, with that being said, moving on to the very end of the survey, one of the additional things that we're trying to accomplish in the recording of information during this point in time count year, we want to make sure that we have additional information that if we're able to serve someone, if we're able to look at their score summary or look at their particular situation and see that we could possibly serve them, or we could refer them to agencies where they can be served, we want to make sure we record some additional information. For instance, in the first question under additional information, it says on a regular day, where is it easiest to find you and what time of day is it easy to find you? Sometimes when you're trying to assess homeless persons, they may be very transient. So the place where you may have met them that morning or evening when you surveyed them may not be the place that they're actually staying or where they currently frequent. And so we want to make sure that we get information about their location and how can we catch up with them. And so you see in the next question, we see it says, is there a phone number and or email where someone can get in touch with you or leave a message? So if that person, there may be someone on homelessness who maybe have a cell phone, who may have a cell phone with a few minutes, and so maybe pertinent that we get their phone number and be able to contact them later to do some type of assessment. And one of the last things, which is fairly new to our point in time count, is we want to be able to take pictures. Now we know that some people may not be as happy to volunteer taking a picture. However, when you're doing the survey, make sure you explain that we want to be able to identify the person in the field who we surveyed, and we want to be able to identify them. So if we had to come back and do an assessment, or if we had to come back to connect them to services, we want to be able to know what they look like, who they are, and what they look like. And so this picture can be taken with a professional camera. It can be taken with your cell phone. Most, if not all, cell phones have some type of high quality camera or something close to that. But once again, if they refuse to take the picture, it's okay. They can refuse, because once again, this is a very sensitive thing, and we want them to be able to be we want them to be trusting enough to give us their information. But if they feel uncomfortable, we want to be able to honor their request to participate in certain things. And so, and lastly, we see that photo file name. And this is where a point where, like, let's say if you're taking it with your iPhone, with your iPad, or any mobile device, you can be able to record the file name of that picture as you sync it to your desktop or email those photos or whatever you may have. And so that essentially is the point in time count survey. One thing I made mention of early on in this video was the fact that there is a slight difference between the regular point in time count survey that we use to serve most sheltered and unsheltered homeless persons, and between the people who are experiencing domestic violence. So what I want to do is I want to take a moment to show you the domestic violence survey and the slight difference. In fact, to first prove that, let me scroll back up to the very top of this survey. As you can see, it's fairly plain. You see that it asks about the sheltered and unsheltered persons, and then it begins to go ahead and ask for first name, last name, and so on and so forth. But now let's look at the the survey in the domestic violence for persons experiencing domestic violence. Now, as you can see, it's distinguishable from the regular point in time count survey because of this big gray space that tells you that this survey is for persons experiencing domestic violence only, meaning that this particular version of the survey is really only meant for people in a domestic violence shelter. We want to be able to capture people who are in domestic violence situations because essentially domestic violence shelters are emergency shelters. They're just emergency shelters with a more specific targeted demographic. And so as you can see, when you look at the survey at glance, it's not much different from what we've just went over in the non-DV survey. However, I do want to make mention of a couple of slight differences. Number one, you see that right here under general information, it doesn't say full name, it says name initials. I want to make note that for any domestic violence surveys that are being recorded within the balance of state point in time count, these surveys will not be entered into our homeless management information system. We are prohibited from entering this information into this system because of VIOWA, which is the Violence Against Women's Act. We are not allowed to record that in HMIS. However, we want to compile this demographic information and be able to report that these persons who are experiencing domestic violence are homeless. So notice that number one, we want name initials. So in this case, like for me, my name is Reginald Glenn, and my full initials will actually be RDG. So you will put that in that blank. Notice that for the birth date, it already has 0101. Now we know that everybody was not born on January the 1st. However, we want to make note that for the people who are experiencing domestic violence, we only want the birth year. We do not want the full specific birth date. We also want the age to help clarify that birth year. And also, we want the last 4 digits of a social security number. Notice that it makes that declaration here, last 4 digits only, and knowing their gender. And as far as that is the only thing that's really different from the non-domestic violence survey, is having those identifiers basically kept more sensitive, or kept to a minimum, so that we can get the information, be able to know that this person is an individual. However, we understand that they're in a different situation. Even if we're capturing that a person who is a domestic violence victim family, if you scroll down to the family, if we look at the family composition type, we see that although it asks the same question about family composition, once again, if this person is domestic violence, we see that once again we ask for initials, year of death, the year of birth, male or female, initials, social security, last 4 digits of social, and the same can be done for children, initials only, their age, and what gender. Other than those striking contrasts, the domestic violence version of the survey is essentially the same. There is a slight difference, and you need to be able to make note of difference. People who are in domestic violence situations should only fill out this survey only if you're in a domestic violence shelter. And with that being said, essentially that is the end of the explanation or the walkthrough of the point in time count surveys. Once again, we know that the survey is very lengthy. However, we want to be able to capture all the information possible, but yet still respecting the client's right to privacy. These surveys that I just went through can be found at Mississippi United's point in time count resource site, which is MUTEH, that's MUTEH.wordpress.com. Here you can find all information for all things point in time count for this year, as well as you can see videos of how to survey. Specifically, you can look at how to survey a person who is unsheltered versus a person who is in a domestic violence situation. And our hope is to be able to help serve everyone else and be able to help them to do the count as best as possible. And with that being said, thank you guys for watching this video. I look forward to you guys volunteering. And once again, if you have any questions concerning the point in time count, you can email me, Reginald Glenn, at rglenn@mute.org, or you can email me at pitcount@mute.org. Thanks for watching. Hope you guys having a successful count.